What's up, guys? Today on Sports Spectrum, a really cool conversation with an Olympic gold medalist, Hunter Armstrong, Olympic swimmer, American competitive swimmer for the United States. Joins us here today on the show at the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo, back, of course, in 2021 because of the pandemic. He won a gold medal in the 4x100 meter medley relay, swimming backstroke in the preliminaries, and he placed ninth in the 100 meter backstroke. So this is a guy who has an Olympic gold medal, and now he's getting ready to try and get another one, maybe a few more Olympic gold medals in the 2024 Summer Olympic Games. He's the world record holder in the long course 50-meter backstroke, and at the 2022 World Aquatics Championship, he took a gold medal in the 4x100 meter freestyle relay, the 4x100 meter mixed medley relay, and a silver medal in the 4x100 meter medley relay. He's got a lot of medals, Hunter Armstrong, and he's going to talk about them and, of course, his walk with Jesus here in just a moment. He's going to be talking to my friend Cole Claiborne, our colleague here at Sports Spectrum. He works as a contributing producer. He's going to be filling in today for me on today's conversation with Hunter. So Cole and Hunter, it's coming up in just a moment here on Sports Spectrum. First, I want to remind you about our friends at Water Mission. You can go to watermission.org/join the team and learn more about this great ministry, bringing clean water, safe sanitation, and hygiene solutions to developing countries and disaster areas all around the world. We're talking about Hunter Armstrong as a guest, as a swimmer in the water, right? Well, imagine going across the world and realizing that people can't even go take a cup and get clean water to drink from each and every day, or just go to the bathroom like you and I do each and every day. Safe hygiene solutions. Well, that's what Water Mission does. That's why they're so amazing, Christ-centered, and they do such a great work in the world, helping people have clean water and safe sanitation. You can go to watermission.org/join the team right now. My wife, my daughter, myself, we sow into this ministry every month. I think it's a great one for you to consider as well. Go check out watermission.org/join the team and be a part of the great work with Water Mission.
Well, Hunter Armstrong, welcome to the Sports Spectrum podcast. How's it going?
Going pretty well. How are you?
Doing well. Excited to talk with you ahead of the 2024 Olympics this year, which is crazy because I feel like we did just have an Olympics, but I guess it was a shorter window this time because of the pandemic. So that makes sense. It feels like we just had the Olympics, but nonetheless, excited. It's always an exciting time when the Olympics come around. And this will be number two for you. You got to go with the previous one in Tokyo, won a gold medal. What have the last few years been like for you after that experience and then training now for this next Olympics?
I think crazy is an understatement. I went into the Olympic trials not even trying to make the team. I just wanted to finish top 6 so that I could get some cool shirts with like a USA flag on the national team. Because I think I was like a sophomore in college when it happened.
Wow.
So yeah, I remember after I finished the race, I went out and my coaches gave me a hug and they're like, your life will never be the same. I'm like, I don't know if I should be excited about that. um, but I definitely am now. And we've had an interesting, quad of the 3 years, having Worlds every single year and then Worlds and Paris in the same year. So I'm excited to see what a normal quad will look like after this. But yeah, it's been crazy.
Did you when you went back to college at Ohio State, did you feel like you had somewhat of a target on your back after that success? I mean, you're proving yourself as one of the best swimmers, not just in the country, but in the world whenever you go and compete in the Olympics. Then you come back and you got a gold medal in hand as well. So what was that experience like? Did you feel that pressure? Did that get to you at all when you were performing in college? Maybe it gave you more confidence. Just what was that like for you when you're actually in the water?
Coming back from Tokyo was tough. Because I mean, we always hear about post-Olympic depression and all the issues you face after coming back into the real world. And I had no experience with any of that because that was my first time ever competing for Team USA, and to do it on the biggest stage possible, nothing could have prepared me for that. But my team was great. I was really worried that I'd come back and they would look at me differently. Um, but no, I came back and it was like I never left. They're like, "Oh, that's so cool. You got a medal. Like, can I see it?" And then I got like a week of people talking about me as an Olympian, and then I was right back to just another Ohio State swimmer,
Mm-hmm.
um, which was super helpful. But in terms of competition, I definitely had a target on my back, but I was able to sort of um, separate that because I am not a short course swimmer. Um, my freshman year, I qualified like 32nd to get into NCAA's when it was canceled.
Mm-hmm.
Sophomore year, I finished like 13th, then made the Olympic team, came back, and I think I got fifth as a junior.
Okay.
So I was able to disconnect short course and long course, recognizing that it's two completely different sports. So there was definitely a target, but anybody that understood me or swimming enough to understand that it's two separate things, um, I didn't feel that pressure.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned post-Olympic depression. Me not being an Olympic athlete, obviously have never experienced that, so it's a little bit unfamiliar. But I can understand you going to a big event like that, and some people maybe feel a letdown, or then maybe there's some mentality changes, and for some people they might experience a lot of fame that they hadn't before, and that can get to their head. And so I can understand why there would be some challenges coming back from that. But it sounds like you were able to keep a pretty good head on your shoulders. What do you attribute that to? Is that more your personality, or was that a mix of your personality? And was there coaches or other mentors pouring into you, or just what do you attribute all of that to, where you were able to kind of stay true to who you were after that experience?
I've always just been a small town guy, so I stayed true to myself. It doesn't matter what I accomplish in my life. Um, I'll never change who I am. Um, Obviously, faith did have a pretty big part of it, but honestly, my faith journey picked up a lot more over this past like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's sort of like restarted the ball rolling. I grew up in church and like the summer camps and all that stuff, but it sort of became a background for me where obviously I knew I was a Christian and I tried my best to live as a Christian, but I found myself only turning to God when I needed him, which tend to be in competition
Mm-hmm.
because it's at that point where you're thinking about it. When in your everyday life, you're you're not really always conscious of it.
Right.
Um, but my teammates were great. My coaches were putting up with a lot of stuff that they probably shouldn't have put up with. Like I was skipping classes and missing practices. Um, it was a hard adjustment to come back into to normal life after that. Um, but it gets easier each time, and it's titled post-Olympic depression, but it sort of goes along with every meet where you're at the top of the world, and everybody cares and life is great and you're reaching your goals and all those like hormones and emotions are just skyrocketing. And then as soon as you go back to normal life, it all drops.
Yeah, because
Um,
the Olympics are like everybody in the world is watching it, especially here in America. Everybody's watching it, and it only comes every 4 years, and so it's a heightened interest when it does come. And I guess in this case, it's a third year window. But yeah, I mean, you get a lot of that attention for those few weeks, and then a lot of people probably go back into where they're not thinking about the Olympics a whole lot until the next time it comes around. So I can imagine why that would be difficult from I guess a mentality standpoint from an athlete. You mentioned your faith background. So you grew up in the church, and then you credited the last couple of years you've gotten stronger in your faith. What was the catalyst for that change? Like, what was the moment where you really noticed something was changing? Maybe you were seeking after God in a more authentic way, or it just felt more real to you. And was that a matter of just maturity, spiritual maturity? Just what was that moment like? And then what do you attribute all of that to?
I definitely think just maturing physically, emotionally, and spiritually is a big part of it. Um, but the first step was recognizing that it is a problem. Um, at last year's Worlds, I was laying in bed. And I'm like, I'm tired of this. I shouldn't only come to God when I need something. That's not a relationship. And I told myself that I was going to fix it and I was going to do better. And then as soon as the meet ended, I didn't fix it. But during Worlds last year, so in 23 Worlds, um, that was a rough meet for me. I didn't fully hit my taper. I didn't perform the way I wanted to. Um, and then the night before the 50 backstroke, my grandpa died.
Mm.
He was hanging on through the whole thing. I knew he wasn't healthy. I was really hoping that he'd hang on a little bit longer, but that was his favorite event to watch was the 50 back. It was the one that I set the world record in, and not to be not too graphic, but it was to the point where he couldn't open his eyes anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was cancer. He'd been fighting it for, I want to say like 20 years almost.
Oh, wow. So he
He
battled a
was
long time.
he
Yeah.
was a fighter.
Yeah. 20
Um,
years. That's a long, long time. Yeah.
I could be wrong on that. I just know it was a majority of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
Um,
longer than most times. I mean, even if it was anywhere close to that, that's longer than you hear a lot of people that deal with cancer. So
yeah,
definitely sounds like a fighter.
but so yeah, he passed I want to say night before the finals, and my parents weren't going to tell me, but I just knew. I could feel it. And I was standing in the ready room in the little tunnel before we go out. And I remember praying, I'm like, just give me this one for him. Like, I just let me do this for him. And I went out and I won my first individual title. And that was the last event of the meet. So my parents had finally told me. I'm like, I knew. But what was super like it brought me peace to know that he was able to watch that race. Like he was in heaven and he got to watch it with his own eyes. Um, so that was a big moment for me.
Yeah.
And then this past Worlds, my sorry, my my first like serious relationship, 8 months ended 2 days before I left for Doha.
Okay.
So this is the second year in a row that I'm facing the loss of someone I love. Obviously on different levels, but this past Worlds is where I really leaned into it. My brother had been he did a fast, and he was telling me about it, and they have this great church in Columbus, and they're like, you should watch it. They stream it, and I always found myself too busy, and um, it was at that Worlds when I realized, and I think this was on purpose. You eventually hit a point in your life where you say, I can't do this alone anymore. And that was 2 months ago.
Wow. So still somewhat new. Is your brother, I guess, because I was going to ask if there's anybody that you've, sought out for spiritual mentorship, or somebody that's kind of walked with you as you've grown in your faith? Is your brother that person, or do you also have maybe coaches or teammates or anybody else that's helped you during this process as you tried to to grow closer to God?
My brother is definitely the biggest influence. Coach Marsh, David Marsh, is my coach at Cal, and he's outspoken Christian. I've had many talks of faith with him, but when it comes to the details and the things that aren't always pretty, that's something I share with my brother.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I mean, I feel like any young Christian that I hear, or just somebody who's growing in their faith, and I say young in the sense of, it's still somewhat new, it's very, very difficult to do it on your own, and to have somebody that can not only walk you through it, but keep you accountable. Because a lot of times, when you're very new in the faith, or still somewhat new in the faith, is when Satan is there ready to attack you, because he knows it's whenever you're probably very on fire for God, and he'll throw a lot of things at you, especially in the world of sports, where, I mean, you got fame, you got identity, you
Mhm.
got all kinds of things that can mess you up with your heart and your mind. And it can be a minefield, from what I've heard, especially athletes that go on to, to do professional and big time sports. I mean, you're on a big platform too. You got a lot of fans. You've just got a lot of pressure, media, people talking to you. It can get really difficult. And so, has your faith helped you get through some of the typical struggles that you might have experienced in years past as an athlete, that you handled differently? Have you noticed that life, not to say life is different, because I mean, life is going to continue being hard. Just because you become a Christian doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get easier. But have you noticed a change with how you approach certain situations now that you feel like God is more present in your life?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. Have you spoken to Carson Foster ever?
No, no, I haven't.
So definitely recommend getting a chat with him. But um, so we have an IOC chaplain. I think his name's Pastor Ashley.
Okay.
And I think it was since Tokyo, might have been 2022 Worlds, but he was always reaching out to me. And um, he's a good friend with Carson. Carson's been doing this since he was really little. So that was the prior relationship. And Michael Andrew has also been a really big part of keeping me in this. Um, so you'll have to remind me to get back to that in a second, because I want to tell you about Michael.
Yeah.
Um, so Michael has been with me through every step of my career.
Are these guys coaches, friends, or what's the
Other
relation?
athletes.
Other athletes. Okay.
Yeah. Michael was very outspoken about his faith, and so is Carson. And I looked up to Michael. Michael turned pro at like 15 years old.
Wow.
Um, and it was a tier pro series in Bloomington. And he saw that I was nervous, and I had DM'd him, and he responded, which was huge because I'm just this little high schooler. I mean, he's like a year older than me, but on a completely different level. And he responded, and we'd continued to talk. And that made such a big impression on me. Um, but he saw that I was nervous at that meet, and he got out of the warm-up pool before the 100 back, and he came over and he said, "Hey, can we pray together?"
Wow.
And so we prayed, and I went and got my first Olympic trial cut.
And what age were you at that point?
Um, Gosh, 19.
19. Okay. Wow.
Um, and then we found ourselves in the final again at Olympic trials. And I am freaking out because I didn't even think I was in contention to making the final. And now I find myself second seed. And we prayed again in the ready room at Olympic trials. And I cannot describe the peace I felt. Like, biggest race of my life. And I went out there, and it was just insane.
And this was somebody that was competing against you, that offered to pray
Yeah.
with you. Wow. So what did that suggest to you about, because I mean, sports are, I mean, it's very competitive, especially an individual sport like swimming, I mean, I played tennis, and so I get it from that perspective where you sometimes have to really hype yourself up. You don't have, it's not like basketball or football where you have the same type of team atmosphere. I know there's swim teams, and it is like that a little bit, but you're out there on your own, and it's just a different mentality. And so sometimes guys have to really psych themselves up and almost develop an arrogance when they're competing that is maybe not their true persona. And so it's really cool to hear that an opponent was walking up and saying, "Hey, I noticed that you're looking nervous. You don't, and maybe you were, looking just what's the word, like just kind of deer in the headlights, I guess, type of thing." I mean, and
Yeah.
he's saying, "Hey, I want to pray with you." You don't hear that a whole lot, So what did that suggest to you just about what it looks like to be a true Christian? Because I think that is it sounds like a really good example where you really see like God is really exuding through this person.
Yeah. I mean, it meant the world, and I'll touch on it more in a second, but I truly felt like through my entire, I don't know why I was put on this stage. I never saw myself becoming an Olympian or anything. Um, but here I am, and I truly felt like God had just been begging me to use this gift that he gave me, and I kept just not ignoring it, but not embracing it. And like he had reached out through so many different people, and I'd always take it, but I wouldn't follow through. Um, but no, Michael was one of my best friends. He's a brother to me, and he was in the pool again when I broke my first world record. So he's been with me every step of the way. Um, and he even said in an interview before, so he had three events that day at trials, and he won the 50 breast, and he did not tell this to me, but I saw it in the interview after. Um, he's like, she asked about like, how are you handling the event load? And he's like, well, I just really want to be in this 50 back. Like, I think somebody's going to break the world record. I know somebody's going to break it. And we talked afterward, and he's like, I just wanted to be with you when you did it.
Wow. And this is he a USA teammate of yours as well? Is he on the USA
Yeah.
team?
And insanely talented guy.
That's so cool to hear. Like that you're competing. It's that's like the true personality of an actual teammate. Like that just is
Yeah.
really cool to hear because it's cool to be competitive and push other people, but that's another way of encouraging and still being competitive. Because I bet you he figures, hey, if I'm in the water, it's probably going to push the best out of you as well. And
Yeah.
so that's a really cool story. I appreciate you sharing that. And so do you guys talk regularly still about, faith and competing and how that all intermingles? And has he given you, I guess advice is maybe it seems too weak of a word, but I mean, has he given you sort of mentorship on how to navigate the Olympic lifestyle while also growing in your faith?
Um, a little bit. We have a small group that all sort of share that belief.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I was gonna get back to was Pastor Ashley.
Hmm.
He had reached out to me since at least 2022, always saying like, "Hey, if you want to get together and have a Bible study before the meet, like just ask." I never did. But then in Doha, Carson reached out to me and he said, "Hey, we're going to do a Bible study. I want you there." And this is, I'm bed rotting, just like trying to get over the fact that I just lost my girlfriend. Um, and I decided just, it, it was placed on my heart. I'm like, no, I need to do this. And I went down. It was me, David Johnson, Carson, and his brother Jake, Michael, and I think that's it. Could be wrong, but and then we had a Bible study about what it means to compete as a Christian because competing is I'm better than you and we're gonna go head to head, but doing it in a way that glorifies God. And that was just the neatest thing. And that's sort of when I bought into it. I'm like, I I've been using this gift for myself. Though it was never intentional. Like I'm not like, oh, I don't need you. Like I did this by myself. You're always cognizant of it, but my actions did not always show it. It felt like empty promises to me.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
that's really cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
it
you
was
off.
no. Every time I swim, I point up to the sky because it's God first. Like none of this matters without him. And it got to the point where it became a habit, just part of the pre-race ritual. And I didn't like that. And sometimes I'd only remember to do it when I do it every time before a race. But if I don't win, I don't always do it. And that was something that I made an effort toward this year is you don't only accept everything that comes with it when you win. You can't be upset and be like, "Oh, shoot, he didn't answer my prayer," because that's where things get shady. Michael was racing against me in the 50 back at Worlds, like in Doha. We're both praying to not necessarily win. I've sort of changed my prayer because I don't want to ever say, please God, let me win.
Right.
I don't care that much to like my prayer before every race is give me the strength to do my best
Mhm.
and may whatever I do bring glory to your name.
That's beautiful.
Whether that means coming sixth, eighth, first, whatever it is, it was part of his plan, and it's important to recognize that.
One of my favorite examples of just the idea of running your own race. I read this in a book, and I've ended up writing a devotional that goes along with this idea. But if you remember, it was a couple Olympics ago. Michael Phelps was racing. It was like his last Olympics, and he was racing, and I forget what the event was, but there was a South African swimmer that was in the lane next to him, and this swimmer had beaten him in a previous race that year or the year before that, somewhat recently. And there's a famous image where that guy is in the lane and he's looking over at Michael Phelps, and Michael Phelps is like half of a body length ahead of him, doing his stride, and Phelps ends up beating him. And I think that, it's swimming, you all have your own lane. And if the idea of that was like this guy was watching a different lane and it caused him to lose against somebody that he had already beaten, that he maybe could have beaten had he just focused on what he was there to do, and that was swim in his own lane. And so I think it's such a beautiful image. Track racing, same way, where you have your own small lane that you've got to take care of. And if you look all around, you're either going to bump into somebody or you're going to cause yourself to slow down. And so whenever you share your story, I hear that from you, where it feels like you've really been able to accept, like, I'm running my own race, and whatever God has for me is what God has for me, whether that's, like you said, sixth, eighth, first, second, could be anything. And like at the last Olympics, I mean, you swam in the heat, didn't get to swim in the final, if I'm not mistaken, but you still get a gold medal. And so while some people might, be sad about not getting to swim in the final race, you still get a gold medal and you still get to be part of the team. And so I hear a lot of humility in what you're saying, I guess ultimately is what I'm getting at, and a lot of contentment with where you are, what God has you doing. Is that accurate to say? And if so, I mean, what do you credit that to, aside from the stuff you've already shared?
I mean, as far as humility goes, I try my best. I recognize the stage that I've been put on, and I want to give a good example to younger athletes. I mean, it's the same reason I fell in love with this sport in the first place is because of people like Michael that will answer to some random high schooler that DM'd him. Like, I I always respond to people that DM me
Hmm.
because I know how much that meant to me.
Yeah.
Um, and Michael and Carson being strong in their faith. Um, it's I think we're seeing a shift here. And
Yeah.
I said it in Tokyo, but we're seeing more and more athletes being outspoken about their faith. And that is just the coolest thing ever. And I really hope that people start to catch on, be like, the most successful athletes in the world are all Christians.
Yeah. That's one of the best things we get to do here at Sports Spectrum. I mean, that's why we exist, is to share those stories of Christian athletes, because a lot of times, they get interviewed and they don't get a chance to talk about their faith. A lot of mainstream media, they may not want to ask about it, or if they do, sometimes it gets cut off. We saw that happen in the NFL playoffs this past year. And so, we love getting to share those stories because, a lot of these really high profile, not even high profile, just a lot of these even smaller school athletes, a lot of high school athletes, like they have a faith and they want to share it, and they really believe that God has given them that ability to do something to share their faith, or to give glory to God. And so it's awesome to hear your story, because that's exactly what we love to see here. And I guess kind of shifting gears a little bit, uh, just thinking about how you're gearing up for the Olympics, and there's the next few months are going to be hectic and crazy busy for you. And that's a very easy time for anybody, whether they're an athlete or they're just busy with their job, to allow their faith to sort of slowly drift into the background and it not become as much of a priority for them. So, what do you do on a daily basis, or what do you plan to do as your schedule gets ramped up toward the Olympics, to make sure that that doesn't get forgotten about, that you don't uh, lose the fire that you have now for God?
I try to recognize the smaller things. I walked out this morning and I was walking to practice and it's so snowy here.
Man,
But
it's like 75 degrees here where I live, so
yeah, I'm in Colorado Springs. So, but I was just walking out and trying not to slip on the stairs, and it's just beautiful snow covering the ground. You look over to your right and there's mountains, and I'm like, thank you for, waking me up this morning and giving me purpose in another day, and for just the beauty of this world. Um, which I think typically I wouldn't recognize it, be like, oh, that's pretty, and I'd go about my day. Um, but I don't mean to keep bringing up the X, but honestly, a lot of this has come from
yeah,
that because I found myself at the absolute lowest
yeah.
and I had nowhere else to turn to.
Hmm.
And I was laying in bed after basically crying all night. I'm like, I can't do this alone anymore.
Hmm.
And so now I'm just sort of on this journey of self-improvement. And um, that same church that my brother goes to in Columbus, they they stream it every Sunday. Haven't been great about that. I plan on fixing that, but I joined a small group of just men that meet every Wednesday.
Through that church.
And yeah, at that church, it's all Zoom.
Awesome.
Um, and I'm reading. I figure you gotta learn to love yourself.
Yeah.
And so I, as much pain as I'm in, I think that's what I needed
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it humbled me. And the minute you care about something more than God, he takes it away.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it, we often get our priorities misaligned, and sometimes things like that like a breakup can recalibrate where our heart is or where our mind should be. And so yeah, sometimes it can be a catalyst for something good. Do you have any sort of parameters in your life, that or guardrails that, if I've got training at this time, and then I've got to do this and that at that time. Do you have a set time where you're spending time with God or praying or reading your Bible, or is it kind of not as regimented yet? It's just kind of whenever you can fit it in, or how do you navigate that? Because I can imagine being a swimmer is a very, very disciplined oriented sport. Most high level sports are, but I mean, swimming, you really, really, really have to care about your nutrition and taking care of your body. And it's just a lot from what I gathered. My nephew is a swimmer, and from what I gathered from his experience and watching my friends that have swam, it's very difficult. And there's a lot that goes into it, especially at the Olympic level. So do you have any sort of guardrails like that where you can make sure you're not avoiding time with God, prayer? Do you have a dedicated time to be in your Bible and things like that?
Yeah, I'd love to say that I could be perfect. But a lot of this is still new for me. Like
Right.
it was always in the background, and it wasn't until I had nothing that I realized what I actually had. So I'm still in the process of growing in my faith. I am learning and trying to make far more efforts in order to live that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I don't yet.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
it's
understandable.
yeah, it's a constant journey,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm honestly blessed and fortunate to be able to start this journey up again.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I am reading right now. Don't give the enemy a seat at your table.
Nice. I love
Um,
Lou Giglio is great.
yeah, I'm enjoying it, and it's one of those that you write in, and so I think
Okay.
that's important as I'm continuing this journey to see where I'm at, be able to look back on it later.
Yeah.
Um, so no, I don't have any
Yeah.
like
No,
set times. It's something that I would like to do. I'm still not even great about watching church every Sunday.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, I mean that's understandable. I mean, it's sometimes it's hard to reverse any sort of like even me. I get busy with work and I struggle at times to be as regimented as I'd like to. So that's a lot of what I focus on is living life too much in a hurry. That's I feel like we do that a lot. And so it's definitely understandable. But it's awesome how you're digging into the books by Louis Giglio. If you ever get a chance and you're in Atlanta, visit his church. I've gone once or twice, Passion City Church, and it's awesome to watch him preach. He's just very gifted with delivering, the word of God, and obviously you're reading one of his books, so he's a great teacher. So
yeah.
just looking ahead to the Olympics this year, I mean, what are you most excited about? I mean, I know that's a very, very broad question that probably could have a million different answers, but when you think about, I guess, this next year ahead, how, does is the when is the qualification process? I guess you still technically have to qualify for the team as of right now, so it's maybe not 100% a sure thing as the moment we're talking, but you participated in the last one. What do you think of your chances of making the team again this year? And what are you most excited about for that process?
Yeah, I think my chances are good, but at the same time, you always have to be ready because there could always be some young kid that you've never heard of that somehow makes the team.
Maybe a kid
Speaking
that
from
DMs you and
experience,
wants you to pray with them. Maybe somebody will
yeah,
do that with you.
I hope so. I hope that I can sort of, I don't want to say continue the legacy of Michael, but I want to be a leader, not only through my faith, but through my team and through younger athletes. So I do think my chances are good of making the team, but honestly, I'm just along for the ride at this point. It like I didn't expect to get here in the first place, so I'm here until God tells me to stop.
Yeah,
Um, so obviously I have goals and I always want to make the team and I want to go win individual gold, but it is the most like anxiety and stressful. Like we have people that have full emotional breakdowns at meets,
yeah,
and it's just so freeing to just be like, I'm gonna do my best and let whatever happens happens.
Yeah.
And one thing that Pastor Ashley said during that Bible study was there's a special thing amongst athletes that when you are giving your absolute best, God meets you in the center.
Yeah.
He meets you in the middle and he shares that with you. And I don't know if how much research you've done. If you watch my Olympic trials 100 backstroke, I flipped last at the 50. So at the halfway point, I was dead last. And then with 25 meters to go, I passed everybody and almost outtouched Ryan Murphy.
Wow.
I don't remember any of that race, but like I I was supposed to be here. I don't know why yet, but I'm gonna keep going it until my time is done.
That's beautiful. When you're racing in the backstroke, I mean, you truly have no idea how anybody else is doing. Am I correct in that? I mean, because you're looking up at the ceiling as you're swimming. I mean, do you have any idea what's going on around you at all? I mean, I feel like you wouldn't be able to without losing focus on your stroke.
Yeah, sometimes you can see splash from a lane next to you, but you
Okay.
can't tell if it's their hands or their feet.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes I'll cheat and I'll like raise my head and look at the scoreboard. Um, but they also have cameras that like fly overhead, so you know if the camera's on you, you're winning.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Um, but yeah, typically if I really need to or I'm worried, I'll like after the 50, I'll raise my head and look at my split and be like, "Oh, too slow. Got to pick it up." Or like I'll look at my place or something, but it's really only like a sneak peek of information to adapt your strategy,
Yeah.
but you're pretty much blind. You are truly swimming in faith,
Yeah.
hoping that you do not hit the lane line.
Yeah, I think that would be my luck is I would end up going diagonal and end up in the lane next to me. So granted, I've never had any formal swimming training, so that's probably why I feel that way. If I had been, swimming a lot in my life like you, then maybe I'd feel more confident. But it feels like a very difficult task doing the backstroke and being competitive with it.
Yeah, it's all about the ceiling. Like in Doha, the ceiling was crooked,
Oh,
so we were constantly having people hit the lane lines. I hit the lane line in the 100 back. Isaac Cooper hit the lane line in the 50 back. Like it was just all over the place because you're going too fast. You're creating too much white water with your hands, and the ceiling is telling you that this way is straight. And so you're following that, and then all of a sudden you hit the lane line, and you hit the other, and you hit the other. Um, Honestly, it's probably easier to close your eyes, but then you miss the flags and you smack your head.
yeah.
So you just kind of deal with it.
Gosh, I never really thought about how difficult that stroke has to be. And I never thought about the fact that you're looking at the ceiling and the ceiling could really play a pretty significant factor into how you're actually swimming. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've never even considered that because, whenever I watch swimming, it's mostly just at the Olympics and everybody's so good. They make it look probably way easier than it actually is. And so you take it for granted as the viewer when you have no concept of how hard it is. So that's great to
Yeah.
hear. Well, anything else that you want to share about this upcoming few months as you're training? I mean, what can we expect out of you this year? What are you hoping to accomplish? I mean, obviously make the team, but any other goals on your to-do list?
Um, First and foremost, make the team. If I don't, nothing else matters.
Yeah,
Um, I'd love to get some relay action. Like I love relays, so
yeah,
I want to be all the relays in Paris. And as far as my individuals, first and foremost, make the final. I didn't make the final in Tokyo,
hmm
but um, I I don't care the color. I want the opportunity to stand on the podium at the Olympics. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a really cool experience. Team USA does something special because we're able to switch all four guys out from prelims to finals. Um, and since the prelim relay doesn't get to stand on the podium, the finals relay presents the medals to the prelims relay. We have like a team meeting where we do that.
Okay.
But I'm just some 19, 20-year-old kid, and Ryan Murphy comes up and he shakes my hand. He puts this medal around my neck, and like, oh my gosh, that's Ryan Murphy. Um, so yeah, I hope that I get to stand on the podium myself and maybe get to hand down a medal to someone else.
Yeah, that's great. I'm excited. I always love the Summer Olympics, and I love watching the swimming events. I was like 18 years old when the 2008 relay happened with Michael Phelps and forget who the other whoever was else was on that team. But I just remember that last like 50 meters, 25 meters, even where they closed in, and it was like the most epic, one of the most epic sporting events. Jason Lezak, Lezak. I mean that was like that still is one of the most indelible sports memories of my lifetime because that was just so incredible to watch. And then the team camaraderie when they're just like going nuts at the end of the lane, cheering them on. The swimming relays are truly one of my favorite things of the Summer Olympics. So I'm excited. I'm excited for you. I'm excited to follow you as we gear up for this year's Olympics. Well, Hunter, thanks for joining Sports Spectrum. It was great talking with you, and best of luck. Yeah, best of luck this summer, and we are definitely rooting for you.
Thank you very much.
And many thanks to Hunter Armstrong for joining us here on Sports Spectrum, and we're going to be cheering him on as he makes a go for the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris. We also thank our friend Cole Claiborne for filling in today. Cole had a great conversation there and did a wonderful job with Hunter. Cole is a contributing writer and producer with Sports Spectrum. He does a great job, and we appreciate him sitting in for me today on the show. And look for more conversations like this, hopefully coming your way the rest of this summer, because we're excited about this summer. Not only are the Olympics happening this summer, but Sports Spectrum's got a new Sports Spectrum app coming your way this summer as well, which has me super excited. A Sports Spectrum app, a one-stop shop home for all of our content, articles and devotionals and podcasts and video content. It's going to be a great resource that we're excited to bring to all of you. Of course, it'll be free, so you can go check that out soon. We'll make that announcement officially here, hopefully in a couple of weeks, and let you know about the Sports Spectrum app. In the meantime, make sure you're checking out our website, sportspectrum.com, and then whatever app that you're listening to this podcast on, make sure you click that subscribe or that follow button so that you do not miss any more conversations like today's with Hunter Armstrong. We love you, we thank you, and we hope you'll join us next time for another conversation here on the show. Have a great rest of your day, and this is Sports Spectrum. See ya.